To make this butterfly ranunculus, you will need these colors in cardstock: yellow, harvest orange, sour apple, and jellybean green. You will also need a thick stem wire and a 24 gauge wire, a marker, an orchid. This is the Tombow brush marker 673, a light pink paint pen. We like to use these Posca markers. And then you'll also be using colored pencils in lemon yellow, pink rose, and pink. All these materials are listed in the post for you. To start out, we're going to take our cut petals. We used a Cricut cutting machine to cut ours. And you'll take your marker, and I'm going to use the thin end of the marker from the center of the petal. I'm going to do very light brush strokes. Continue adding the brush strokes to all of your petals. I find it helpful to keep my petals stacked in the order that they'll be stacked on the flower. Next, we'll take the pink colored pencil and we're going to add some darker shading at the base of each petal. I'm going to use the side of my pencil so that it can kind of fade up into the rest of the petal. Next, we're going to take the lighter pink pencil, add a few strokes of color on the back side of each petal, starting from the center and going up, similar to how you applied the marker on the front side of each petal. Now that we've finished coloring the petals, we're going to go ahead and take our two center pieces along with the yellow colored pencil. We're just going to add a stroke of color from the center up to the tip of each point on the center. This paper is textured that I'm using on one side, and I am coloring on the textured side. Next, we're going to add some color to our bud petals. I'm going to take the pink colored pencil and just add a little bit of shading right at the base of each petal, just so that it fades up into the tip of the petal. Next, we're going to shape our petals. So I'm going to take this wool block that's usually used for felting, but it has a nice squish to it. And I'm also going to take our steel ball tools. Place the petal down on the squishy surface. You could also use a folded up towel. An ironing board with a bit of squish also works pretty well. Next, you're going to take a larger ball tool. I'd say it's about 3/4 of an inch. You're just going to press into the petal while you're making circles, focusing on the outer edge of the petal. This will give it a nice cupped shape. If you do small circles in the center of the petal, it'll make it even more cupped. When you're focusing on the outer edge of the petal, it just brings those edges up nicely. You can also use the smaller end of the ball tool along the edges to smooth it out a little bit so it's not quite as wrinkled. You're just going to repeat this with every petal. That's what the petal looks like once you've shaped it. You do have to use quite a bit of pressure when you're using these steel ball tools on this very thick cardstock. Again, I'm keeping my petals stacked in order. On your template, they're labeled A, B, C, D, etc. Once you finish with your petals, we're going to go ahead and take the centers. Using the smaller end of the steel ball tool, working in circles right at the center, applying quite a bit of pressure to shape, bring the edges of the center up. You'll do that to both centerpieces. We're also going to do that to the two sepals. Should have a larger sepal and a smaller one. And then we'll also do it to the sepal for the bud. The bud sepal is a little bit larger, so you can actually pull the steel ball tool up each sepal leaf to help them curl in a bit more. And next we're going to shape the bud. So you're going to shape the bud so that the colored side is facing out. So you're going to flip the colored side down and shape each petal using small circles. We actually might want to use an even smaller ball tool. So this is the smallest one that's included in the set. So each of the 5 bud petals should be cupped inward. You can set that aside. And we're done using this. Next, we're going to go ahead and take our stamen, some white glue. We like to use the Barely Art glue. I'm going to apply a line of glue along the bottom edge. And I'm going to take my needle nose tweezers and grab one end. And I'm going to roll, while I'm holding on to the one end, I'm going to roll the tweezers so that the stamen wraps around itself. Keep the base of the stamen and the tops even as you wrap. Once you finish wrapping it, you can remove the tweezers from the center. Hold it together for a little bit so that the glue dries. You really only need to hold it for maybe 5 seconds. This glue gets tacky pretty quick. And then you just want to look in the bottom of the stamen where you wrapped, and with your tweezers pinched together, go ahead and make sure you have a nice center hole. And this is where you're going to press your wire into when you're ready to add your stamen to the flower. So I've made a nice hole in the bottom of my stamen. And I'm going to set this aside and let the glue dry. While that's drying, we're going to go ahead and build our bud. Take a 24 gauge wire, and then using your pliers, make a small loop at the tip of the wire. You're then going to slide the bud petal set onto the wire all the way up, and that loop in the wire is going to hold the bud petals on so it doesn't slide off. Next, you're going to put a nice big glob of hot glue in the center, covering that looped wire. And then go ahead and press all of your petals together and hold while the hot glue dries. Next, you're going to slide the bud sepal onto the wire. The sepal is going to cup around the bud. You're again going to use a dot of hot glue just at the base of the bud to hold the sepal on. And then go ahead and use a little bit of white glue applied to each sepal to hold the sepal up close to the bud. You're going to need to hold the sepal around the bud for a little bit until the glue gets tacky enough to hold it on its own. Next, we're going to wrap the top 3 inches below the bud with a strip of cypress crepe paper. So this is the extra fine cypress crepe paper. I'm just going to cut a nice strip that's about 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to cut a couple of them. We like using this for stem wrap. Then I'm going to apply some white glue to the part of the wire that I want to cover. Stretching the strip of crepe paper a little bit before I begin to wrap. And then you can just tear the strip free when you're done. And that's your bud. Next, we're going to make a couple leaves, and you will need the 24 gauge wire. You have a small leaf and a large leaf, and you'll begin by pushing the end of the 24 gauge wire through the hole in the leaf. Allow about a half an inch to an inch of wire to lay up onto the leaf. You'll apply some glue just underneath the wire down the stem of the leaf. Fold the stem of the leaf up and over the wire to cover it and hold it in place. So that's the smaller leaf, and then we'll also make a large one. So same thing, push the end of your 24 gauge wire up through the hole, apply some glue underneath the wire and then just on the stem. And make sure you're only putting as much wire onto the leaf as the stem will cover. You can set your leaf to the side so that glue can dry. And next we're gonna build our flower. So you'll need a thick stem wire, and we're gonna build this flower from the bottom up. We're gonna start with the smallest sepal. Go ahead and place it onto the wire. You may need to twist the wire as you're pulling the sepal down. Add a little bit of white glue. And then we're going to add the larger sepal on, and it will be cupped up towards the flower. After you've added the large sepal onto your wire, we can start adding petals. So you're going to start with petal E. Add a little bit of white glue onto the top of my sepal, add my petal on top, and then I will add a little bit of white glue just around the wire, and then I will add petal D. Add some glue onto the petal, adding petal C next. Stack the petal sets in a way so that none of the petals rest directly on top of one another. After you've added all of your petal sets, we're going to go ahead and add these orange centers. So add a little bit of glue on top of the petals, add one of the centers. Everything should fit pretty tight over the wire. This will help everything stay in place. Add your second centerpiece, making sure you're staggering all of the points. Once you've placed your centerpieces on, you can kind of bring the edges of the center back up because you may have pressed them down a bit. You can also use your tweezers to do that as well, and to also help you push anything down. Next, you're going to add your center stamen, and so you should have a nice hole in the bottom. You can make sure it fits over your wire nicely, and we're actually going to use a little dot of hot glue to add this piece. You could use white glue as well. I'm just going to use hot glue so that it dries a bit quicker. We're going to let all of that glue dry and set before messing with the center anymore. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to go ahead and wrap the stem with a strip of the cypress crepe paper. So go ahead and add. Make sure you're stretching the crepe paper as you wrap your stem. This will give you a smoother finish. When you've gotten to the end of your stem, you can just go ahead and tear away any remaining crepe paper. Next, we're going to add our leaves and our bud to our stem. And I'm going to go ahead and trim this wire 2 inches below the leaf. And I'll do that with both leaves and then also with my bud. I'm going to start by adding my smallest leaf first. about 2 inches below the base of the flower. And then we're going to attach it using our extra fine crepe paper strip. Same color as the stem in cypress. And you can stop wrapping once you've covered. Add my bud, just slightly lower than the leaf that I just added. Last, I'm going to add my large leaf, only maybe a 1/2 inch lower than my bud. And then we're going to take a curling tool and shape our leaves. I'm just going to do this by kind of rolling my finger over the edge of the curling tool to get some nice curls in the leaf. Now we're going to go ahead and finish up with our center. We're going to use the needle nose tweezers, and you're just going to pull, you're just going to really splay it out. Makes it look fluffy. You really want to push those outer ones down so that they almost touch the orange centerpiece. And then you may need to use your tweezers to spread out those center ones. You can also use your tweezers to angle the orange back up. They should almost be curling in towards the green stamen. To finish off this flower, we're going to add some light pink to the very tips of the stamen. So really make sure you have enough paint on the tip of the paint marker, and you're just going to kind of dab at the tips of the stamen. Just lightly brush . All right, and you've finished your butterfly ranunculus.